I think that my forays off into other materials or other ways of working or other contexts for my work are all kind of in relation to this material that I started off in. So I think the idea of not going back feels a bit like kind of exile or something. And I think that would bring a sadness with it. But I'm aware that at the same time, like I think I said, I'm always kind of testing myself to check that I'm not being too seduced by a material, maybe. I'm not sure what I think the danger is. I'm not sure if anyone else, Jazz, as someone that's trained in a particular technique or a particular material, did you have that same sense?
I really resonate with what you're saying in that kind of like, well, how you describe it, that kind of being conscious about it, I think, is what I get from your approach. Yeah, just considering why that material and where it's going, maybe.
Would you find a black market? Would you find a black market in the material world that you could step into and subvert the restriction that was placed?
Oh yeah, maybe I like it. Yeah.
Black market.
Anybody else? Yes.
Just wondering, do you think learning learning through a specialism gives you the freedom to then move away from it into other areas? Do you think that was happening if you kind of went the other way?
As in you weren't trained in a material first?
That being a jeweller sort of, in a way, made you break free from it.
A little bit, yeah. I talk about that quite honestly, about my issue with me making jewellery and it not being a suitable outcome for what I want to talk about, or what. Yeah, it wasn't. So, yeah, maybe it was.
Why did you choose jewellery originally?
Because of that wonderful art teacher that got me on a great trajectory. It's better than studying pharmacy. What would the situation be if I studied pharmacy? I'd be like some mad scientist, I don't know. Perhaps, yeah, I think so.
Go ahead, yeah.
So I feel like I've heard from a lot of institutions that sculpture is becoming quite a redundant form of art, and we're moving more into the digital things. Like in art institutions, they've sort of started to minimize like sculpture classes, going more towards graphic design and digital-based art. And I found it really interesting how here today at this symposium, we've got artists and creators who are put together, some of which, you have sculptures or architectural forms that you work with, but also we paired it with TED's talk, where you're very much about the ideas and concepts and more of the digital. And this is a question for sort of artists and curators alike, but how do you see those things being connected when seemingly there's been that disconnect? Who wants to start?
Yeah, one thing I was going to say, I was getting towards the end and I only had a few minutes to go, so I left it out. But because of the way that I'm working on that final project, the search engines I was showing you, I'm finding more and more I'm getting niched into people think I'm a startup and I'm a business and I'm part of the technology sector, whereas I want to be, like, I see these guys as my peers. And when I talk to people about that project, inevitably they say, oh, have you seen this? Have you seen this? With similarities. And there are other websites and there are other apps. And I always want to say, no, I haven't seen them. I don't want to see them. Have you seen Jazzy and Shu? Because like that, the final slide I ended on, and the weird versus weird, I see that as far more as like a visual representation of what I'm trying to say than I do like people comparing me to other kind of technologies in browsers. But yeah, I think it's back to labeling and kind of like some of us have touched on it today, like why we label stuff and language and what that does and the boundaries it sets. And those last couple of questions you've just answered about kind of when you're given a boundary, then you challenge it.
But it's also really interesting that you link it directly to education and how courses are changing in education. And the course that you did, James, which sounds so practical and process-based. But for example, at Glasgow School of Arts, the ceramics department closed about 8 years ago, but there's actually an appetite for it so much that as part of their reinstated activities week this week, they've got a temporary ceramics department. happening in the union. So I think it's really interesting the way that these tendencies it's clear that these tendencies all link directly to how academia is running itself and finding ways to bring money into its schools, whether they're independent or aligned to bigger institutions, but that making was disregarded and it's now kind of slowly coming back. I don't know if that kind of...
I would think so as well. We were talking about the kind of the trend of the maker kind of spaces, and I don't know, because I haven't heard, I kind of don't know that what you're describing is kind of push to digital and a less of a push towards sculpture making. I've never really heard that, so it's really interesting to hear that from you. Are you studying at the moment?
No, but I have friends who struggle with sculpture because a lot of emphasis is more on film/digital
Really?
in their institutions.
Yeah. I think more reason to bring five completely different practices in a room. I think more of that.
I was going to say, I think that in some ways that sort of making and sculpture has never gone away. I think the conversation has shifted. And I think when I mentioned sort of earlier about the sort of post-internet, I think the thing about it was that, and I'm talking about it like it's in the sort of past, but it just took up quite a large sort of part of the discourse at a particular time, i.e. three or 4 years ago. But at the same time, what was happening, especially in contemporary art, was this revisitation of ceramics. So there's artists like Aaron Angel or Jessie Wine who are looking at ceramics, but very much from, sort of a fine art, sort of deconstructing what sort of thingliness and making can kind of offer, and doing really interesting stuff. But at the same time, there's sort of artists like Ken Price who have been shown in the UK for the first time. So I think it's got a lot to do with, in contemporary art, certainly, about what's been foregrounded in terms of discourse. But I'd argue, actually, the making's never stopped. And what's interesting to hear is that you are a student. So what's happening in art schools is that perhaps maybe a particular kind of sort of studio working is disappearing. But I don't know, like, as a curator, I'm still meeting lots of people who are still, getting their hands dirty, whatever that means. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Anybody got any reflections on today? Or
Just a wee niggly thing. Why were you using things from the pound shop when you did those workshops?
The cost of the commission. It was also following a model that a workshop we were given when I was in the Royal College of Art that used them, and things become quite less precious about pound shop items. The way that they're made is you can pull them apart quite quickly and reconstruct them.
But why use new ones? Why not go to a charity shop and get things? Why buy into that market?
Yeah, basically it's a financial constraint as much as anything, that even a charity shop is selling stuff for more than £1. Like little bits of china for £2.50, so it just limits the amount of things you can buy if you've only got like a £20 budget. Literally you can run a workshop with about 15 kids on £20 worth of pound shop items, whereas...
is that okay?
I'd also, but...
How do you mean, in terms of like sustainability, or...?
It's like buying things from Primark.
Yeah, I've had, me and Pete, who I run the workshop with, had this conversation, like how sustainable is it when it's...
London, there was a place called the Scrap Project, which was scrap from all sorts of factories, and you could go along, we were working with children, you could go along and pick up materials. It was funded, publicly funded, but it was a great idea, so that all this scrap stuff, fabrics, all sorts was all being used. No, I just found it great for me going into a pound shop and buying that stuff.
Yeah.
On a sustainable level, like the fact that it all gets chucked away, and and then we've had those discussions.
Where did those discussions take you to?
We actually just started to explore the notions of like your modular stuff, making things that could be put together to form. Because basically the objective of the workshops is that someone that's never created an object before can put things together and form a new narrative, and then show that to someone else, and someone else would believe that narrative, and they feel agency over it. But yeah, so it could.
It's just the whole idea of supporting pound shops and what they stand for.
Yeah, I there is sort of a different approach, of course, which is where you put a call out and you sort of accumulate, or you have a bank of things that you can draw on. But it's a very different type of conversation, and I think sometimes with these workshops is that you're invited to deliver a very particular type of engagement and sort of criteria. But I think within what you're saying there is real potential. So that LA artist I sort of showed, what's interesting about his work is through actually necessity, because he doesn't have the money to buy materials, and he gets these sort of parcels where he won't know what he's got, and he'll work with that. And it's a really lovely narrative. It's actually his father-in-law who's no longer an artist. But really where the place that came from was being an artist who doesn't have the resources to buy new materials and needed to work with what they had. That's just a really interesting point in terms of how we run engagement workshops. And
I mean, even when I was a young mother, we all used to, the school would send out a thing, and you had to keep like a box under the sink with all your toilet roll holders and plastic caps, all that sort of stuff that would go to school for them to use to make stuff out.
Just thinking, there's a sort of, I wonder if there's a, this is chiming with something that I always like to talk to students at university or art school about, this idea of where you source your materials, or perhaps unexpected sources, which I think also is really evident in your work, Jazz. And for me, I've always subsidised my practice as an artist with other jobs. And I always think that was something that was definitely underplayed when I was studying, that was going to be pretty much a necessity for almost everyone. And that doesn't mean you failed, and it doesn't mean you've missed the boat, and it doesn't mean that you're not good enough or something like that. But also, beyond that, you can gain unexpected skills and material contact and reference points through that process that can inform your work. And I was just thinking about my love of vinyl and shiny things. I was a shop window display fitter for years as a part-time job, and just thinking about that kind of free gift of materials to work with, or skills to practice with, or references to feed back into your work. I always think is really important to have one eye out for.
Free materials is one thing, and ethics of material is another thing. It's a whole other symposium. Can we do another symposium?
It's a really interesting question, though.
I think it's just something we all have to. Last Friday I spent a conference on ethical jewellery and watching films about what happens in gold mines and silver, and and I can hardly touch it now, but I just get over it. But I think we have to think about it all the time now.
I think they're also rerunning that course, aren't they, in Edinburgh in March. I think I'll find it and tweet it at 5 Contemporary. I think they're doing
Goldsmiths.
running it. I think it's coming back in Edinburgh. They were talking to
Goldsmiths.
Quick poll: who would be interested in a symposium around ethical materials?
Great, so that's the topic for next week. Thank you. Saved us a lot of distraction.
Or maybe. Well, I'm really sorry about the timing. I'm going to take quite a lot of the responsibility for that one. Just partly because you get absorbed in it and you want to listen, and I think it's a real privilege to be in these spaces. I mean, particularly when you reflect on what Ted was saying around, kind of we're the people in here. We're not the users. We're not the consumer. We're the people. We're interacting face to face. So I hope you will forgive us collectively for running over slightly. I wanted to remind you about the publication if you haven't got one. I think they're lurking around somewhere.
We have some here,
Stephanie
and
Lady.
they're available online or will be very shortly.
And the other thing I just wanted to flag up was the free drop-in bodging workshop with
Town
Jasmine.
shop items.
Tomorrow, yeah. Ethically sourced outside of St Andrews. And for families with children
And
under 5.
grown-ups too.
And
Or
grown-ups.
anyone,
Anyone who wants to come
even
along
under
and have a
5,
chat with
just
Jasmine
come.
and
Yeah.
do some-
I've done it, it's pretty good fun actually.
Yeah.
What time is it on?
1:30 to 3:30 tomorrow afternoon at St Andrews Museum.
So I'm gonna draw us to a close. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd really like to thank Jasleen for pulling this symposium together, for inviting some incredible minds to kind of come and share their honesty and insight with us. So thank you to Amapreet, Jasleen, Catriona, Ted and James. I'd like to invite you to give them a round of applause. I've got my thanks on hand so I don't forget. 5 Contemporary, I'd like to thank everybody there. Diana, Stephanie and Arlene, who I haven't met, but hello. Thank them for kind of making today possible, for the exhibition, for the programme. Yes.
Big thank you
Very valuable.
to you, Helen.
Thank you very much. And funders. I
Seeing
think it's
us
important
through.
to thank our funders, Creative Scotland, Fife Council.
Yeah.
So, and Buy a Theatre, thank you for your help.
Hospitality, but particular thanks to Stephanie, my colleague who has worked
Thanks,
with Jasmine
Stephanie.
closely to bring everything together. But
Well done, everyone.
thank you.